The transport shuttle rattled like a tin can full of rocks. Lena Hartwell pressed her forehead against the small window and watched the frozen methane plains of Ashmar stretch endlessly below. Somewhere down there, buried under kilometers of ice, sat the reason she traveled 3 months to reach this miserable corner of the galaxy. Nobody wanted this assignment. That much had been clear from the moment Director Solmith handed her the datapad with barely concealed disdain. The Chithrak scholar's compound eyes had gleamed with something between pity and satisfaction as he explained that the Ashmar structure had defeated every serious researcher for the past 40 years. Lena was being sent to catalog failure. She didn't mind. Failure could teach you things that success never would. The shuttle descended through clouds of crystallized gas, and the research station came into view. It looked exactly like every other remote archaeological outpost Lena had seen. A cluster of pressurized domes connected by tunnels, scientific equipment scattered around like abandoned toys, and the general air of a place where hope had died quietly years ago. The landing was rough. Everything this far from civilized space was rough. Inside the station, Primi greeted her with a flash of prismatic light. The Lumini research assistant existed as a vaguely humanoid shape made of crystallized photons, constantly shifting between colors that corresponded to different emotional states. Right now, Primi glowed a sympathetic amber. You must be Dr. Hartwell. Welcome to the end of the universe. Lena managed a tired smile. Is it really that bad? Worse. The food synthesizer only knows 3 recipes, and 2 of them are inedible. Primi's form flickered with what might have been amusement. But I suppose you're here for the chamber, not the cuisine. The chamber, even the way everyone said it, with that particular emphasis, told Lena everything she needed to know. This wasn't just another archaeological puzzle. This was the puzzle that had broken careers and shattered reputations. Primi led her through winding corridors carved into the ice. The walls were transparent in places, revealing layers of frozen methane that had accumulated over millions of years. Ashmar 4 had been dead longer than most species had been alive. The structure was discovered by accident, Primi explained as they walked. A mining survey detected unusual geometric patterns in the subsurface scans. When they excavated, they found something that predates every known civilization in this sector. They descended on a platform that groaned with age, down and down, past strata of ice and stone, until finally they emerged into a vast cavern. Lena's breath caught. The structure rose from the cavern floor like a frozen wave. Its surface seemed to be made of some material that wasn't quite stone and wasn't quite metal. Every centimeter was covered in intricate symbols that hurt to look at directly. They seemed to shift and change whenever Lena tried to focus on them, like trying to grab smoke. Beautiful, isn't it? Primi's voice had gone soft, also completely inert. We tried everything. Energy scans, particle beams, telepathic interface, quantum analysis. Nothing produces a response. The runes won't stay still long enough to translate. It's as if the entire structure exists slightly out of phase with our reality. Lena stepped closer, her boots crunching on the frost-covered floor. What's inside? That's the real mystery. There's a chamber at the heart of the structure. We call it the Rune Chamber. It's the only room we can access, but nothing inside it works. Or if it does work, we haven't figured out how to make it respond. They entered through an archway that seemed to have grown rather than been carved. Inside, the chamber was roughly spherical, maybe 20 meters across. Every surface crawled with those shifting, impossible runes. The air felt thick, heavy with the weight of ages. Lena walked to the center of the room and simply stood there. She'd learned early in her career that sometimes the best thing you could do was be still and let a place speak to you. Modern archaeological methods were all about active investigation, scanning, probing, analyzing. But the old Earth archaeologists, the ones who'd worked before humanity reached the stars, they'd understood something important. Sometimes you had to listen before you could understand. Director Solmith tried for 2 years, Primi said quietly. He brought in experts from 17 different species. Telepaths, empaths, quantum engineers, historical linguists. Nobody could make it respond. And now he's assigned me. Lena smiled without humor. The human. The species that only joined the galactic community 50 years ago. The species everyone considers primitive because we still use our hands for everything. Preemie's colors shifted to an uncomfortable green. I didn't mean to imply you didn't, but Selmith did. Lena reached out and placed her palm flat against the nearest wall. The runes were cool beneath her touch. Smooth. She traced one with her finger, following its curves and angles. It reminded her of something, though she couldn't quite place what. A Celtic knot, maybe, or the flowing script of ancient Sanskrit. She found herself humming. An old song her grandmother used to sing when Lena was small. The melody came without thinking, rising from some deep place in her memory. For just a moment, just the barest fraction of a second, the rune beneath her hand flickered with pale blue light. Lena froze. Had she imagined that? Did you see something? Preemie asked. I'm not sure. Lena pulled her hand back, staring at the wall. The runes continued their endless shifting dance, giving no sign that anything had changed. But something had changed. Lena was certain of it. The chamber felt different now. Less like a tomb and more like something sleeping. Something waiting. I'd like to start fresh tomorrow, she said. Just me in the chamber. Is that possible? Preemie's colors brightened with curiosity. Director Selmith won't approve solo sessions. Too dangerous, he says. Too likely to contaminate the site with improper methodology. Lena turned to face the Lumini assistant. Then I suppose we'll have to wait until he's busy elsewhere. When does he attend the sector symposium broadcasts? A ripple of purple amusement ran through Preemie's form. Every third day cycle. He never misses them. Good. Lena took one last look around the chamber. Because I think this place has been waiting for someone to talk to it the right way. And I don't think that way involves quantum scanners. She could feel it now, a certainty settling into her bones. This wasn't about technology or analysis. This was about something older. Something her species had never quite forgotten, even after reaching the stars. Sometimes the most sophisticated tool was the simplest one. A human hand, a human voice, a human heart willing to reach out across the void and say, I'm here. I am listening. Speak to me. The chamber remained silent as they left. But Lena would have sworn, would have bet her entire career on it, that the silence felt less absolute than before. Something was waking up, and it recognized her touch. 3 days of pretending to review old research files had nearly driven Lena mad. She sat through meetings where Selmith droned on about proper archaeological protocols. She smiled politely when other researchers explained, with barely hidden condescension, why human methodologies were considered quaint relics of a pre-spacefaring culture. She nodded and took notes and waited. Finally, the symposium broadcast day arrived. Selmith departed for the station's main conference room at precisely 0800 hours, his chitinous legs clicking against the metal floor with metronomic precision. The Chithrax never missed a symposium. Lena had counted on that. She waited another 30 minutes to be safe, then made her way to the excavation site. The corridors were empty. Most of the research staff were either attending the broadcast or catching up on sleep. Perfect. The descent platform groaned under her weight. Lena found herself humming that same tune from before, the one her grandmother had sung. She didn't know why. It just felt right. The cavern opened around her like a mouth. The structure rose ahead, silent and waiting. Lena approached the archway and stepped inside. Alone in the rune chamber, the weight of ages pressed down even harder. She stood in the center and slowly turned in a circle, taking in every surface, every shifting symbol. The runes moved like water, never quite settling in a pattern she could read. All right, she said aloud. Let's try this differently. She walked to the nearest wall and placed both hands flat against it. The surface was cool and smooth, almost like polished stone, but not quite. She closed her eyes and simply felt. Nothing happened. Lena tried speaking. She tried singing. She tried pressing harder, touching different sections, tracing the runes with her fingers. Still nothing. Maybe she'd imagined that flicker of light. Maybe this was just one more failed archaeological puzzle. and she was wasting everyone's time. And oh, she'd felt something. She was sure of it. She sat down cross-legged on the floor and thought. Would have been different that first time. She'd been humming, yes, but she'd also been relaxed. Not trying to force anything, just touching the wall while her mind wandered. Most galactic species interacted with technology through telepathy or energy manipulation. The Chithrax used chemical signals. The Lumini worked with light patterns. The Nephiri, who were basically sentient gas clouds, communicated through pressure waves. But humans? Humans touched things. Humans felt things, both physically and emotionally. It was considered primitive, inefficient. Why use your hands when you could use your mind? Maybe because some things were meant to be felt. Lena stood and approached the wall again. This time she didn't try to activate anything. She just touched it, letting her mind wander. She thought about Earth, about the grandmother who'd raised her after her parents died in a research accident. She thought about dusty museum archives and the thrill of uncovering something lost to time. The rune beneath her left hand flickered blue. Lena's heart jumped, but she forced herself to stay calm. She kept her hand where it was and thought about curiosity. Pure, simple wonder at the unknown. Another rune pulsed, this one with a soft green glow. She was onto something. For the next hour, Lena experimented. She discovered that the runes responded to emotions combined with physical touch. Joy made them glow gold. Sorrow brought out deep purple. Curiosity created green light. Determination burned red. But it wasn't just random light shows. The runes were communicating. When she touched one sequence while feeling curious, other related runes would glow in response, like a web of connections lighting up. It was a map of some kind, but not a physical space. A map of concepts, of meanings. The chamber wasn't designed to be read. It was designed to be played like a musical instrument. You had to feel your way through it. Lena lost track of time. She moved around the chamber, touching different surfaces, letting different emotions guide her hands. Gradually, a pattern emerged. Certain combinations of touch and feeling created longer sequences of light. The runes weren't a language in the traditional sense. They were a musical score meant to be performed through sensation and emotion. She was so absorbed in her work that she didn't hear Primi enter until the Lumini spoke. By the celestial harmonics, you're actually making it respond. Lena spun around, her hands dropping to her sides. Instantly, the glowing runes faded back to their normal, shifting patterns. Primi's form blazed with excited yellows and whites. Don't stop. What were you doing? I'm not entirely sure, Lena admitted. But I think whoever built this experienced reality differently than most modern species. They didn't separate thought from feeling or logic from emotion. Everything was integrated. She approached a section of wall she'd been working on and demonstrated, placing her hand on a rune while letting herself feel genuine wonder. The rune glowed green. Then she shifted her emotion to determination, and the connected rune flared red. It's responding to emotional intent combined with physical contact, Lena explained. Most galactic species abandoned this kind of integrated experience millennia ago. You've all specialized. The Chithrax are all about logic and calculation. The Lumini work purely with information as light. The Nephiri exist in abstract thought patterns. But humans? We never fully separated our emotions from our reasoning. We still need to touch things, feel things, experience things through our bodies. Primi drifted closer, colors shifting rapidly as the Lumini processed this information. That's why none of us could activate it. We've been trying to interface with pure thought or energy. But this system requires something we've lost, or something you never developed the same way, Lena said gently. It's not about being better or worse, just different. She turned back to the wall and began working through a sequence she discovered earlier. Touch and joy, touch and curiosity, touch and fierce determination. The runes lit up in a cascading pattern that spread across the entire chamber. Then something new happened, that a section of wall that had appeared solid began to shimmer. The runes there rearranged themselves into a clear geometric shape, a doorway. And beyond that doorway, Stairs descended into darkness that Preemy's colors went pale with shock. In 40 years of study, no one has ever found a way deeper into the structure. Lena stared at the newly revealed passage. Her hands were trembling. Should we tell Sulmith? He'll shut this down. You know he will. Preemy's colors firmed with resolve. He'll claim you contaminated the site. The human emotional responses are corrupting the data. He'll take over, and he'll fail because he can't do what you just did. Lena knew Preemy was right, but she also knew what she was risking. Her career, her reputation, possibly her freedom if Sulmith decided to press charges for unauthorized research. She looked at the stairs leading down into the unknown. Somewhere below, there were answers. The people who'd built this place had left something important behind, something they'd hidden, waiting for someone who could understand their way of experiencing reality, waiting for someone like her. We go now, Lena decided. Before the symposium ends, we document everything and we go down. Preemy flashed agreement, colors bright with anticipation and fear. Together, they descended into the dark, leaving the silent chamber behind. But it wasn't silent anymore. The runes glowed softly in their wake, pulsing with a gentle rhythm like a heartbeat. Something was definitely waking up. The stairs went down farther than seemed possible. Lena counted steps until she lost track somewhere past 300. Her portable light created dancing shadows on walls covered with more of those shifting runes. Preemy floated beside her, providing additional illumination that shifted colors with the Lumini's emotional state. Right now, those colors skewed toward anxious violet. This should be impossible, Preemy said for the third time. The geological surveys showed solid bedrock below the main chamber. There's nothing down here. Clearly the surveys missed something. Lena kept one hand on the wall as she descended. The runes here felt different, more active somehow. They pulsed faintly under her touch, as if responding to her presence. Finally, the stairs ended. They emerged into a chamber so vast that Lena's light barely reached the far walls. The ceiling disappeared into darkness overhead, and everywhere, covering every surface, were more runes and strange objects that hummed with potential. It's a library, Lena breathed, or an archive. Look at the way everything's organized. The chamber was divided into sections radiating out from the center like spokes on a wheel. Each section contained different types of objects, pedestals holding crystalline structures, walls embedded with smooth stones, floors marked with intricate patterns. Nothing looked like any data storage system Lena had encountered in the galactic community. She approached the nearest pedestal. A smooth sphere sat on top, about the size of her fist, covered in tiny runes that flowed across its surface like liquid. She reached out hesitantly and placed her hand on it. The world exploded into sensation. Lena gasped as images, feelings, and concepts flooded her mind. Not words or data, but pure experience. She saw a civilization of beings who looked vaguely humanoid, with skin that shimmered like oil on water and eyes that held depths of emotion she couldn't name. They called themselves the Vidian Collective. She felt their joy in creation, their love for beauty and truth and connection. She understood, in a way that went beyond language, that they'd experienced reality through emotional resonance and physical sensation. Every piece of knowledge they possessed was tied to feeling, to embodied experience. When Lena pulled her hand away, she was crying, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming beauty of what she'd just touched. What happened? Preemy asked urgently. Are you hurt? No, I'm fine. Better than fine. Lena wiped her eyes and laughed shakily. Preemy, this is experiential memory. They stored information by encoding it into objects that transmit direct experience when touched. You don't just learn facts about their civilization. You feel what it was like to be them. She moved to another object, a flat stone embedded in the wall. When she touched it, she experienced a fragment of Vidian philosophy. The understanding that emotional truth and logical truth were not separate things, but different facets of the same reality. That to fully know something, you had to think it and feel it and live it all at once. Object after object revealed more. Lena experienced Vidian art, music that was composed through emotional harmonics. She felt their scientific discoveries, equations that were as beautiful as they were accurate. She understood their approach to medicine, healing that addressed not just the body, but the whole integrated self. And gradually, she began to understand why this archive existed. They were driven out, Lena said quietly. She stood before a large wall covered in particularly complex runes. There was a galactic empire that existed thousands of years ago. They demanded that all knowledge be standardized, made controllable and predictable. The Vidians refused. They believed their way of knowing, integrating emotion with reason, was just as valid as pure logic. Primiesse calors darkened. What happened to them? They were given a choice. Convert all their knowledge to acceptable formats or face extinction. Lena placed both hands on the wall, and the full weight of Vidian history poured through her. They chose to hide instead. They sealed their archives and went into the deep places of the galaxy, hoping that someday the universe would be ready for their gift. But they're gone now. Yes, they died out slowly, unable to sustain their culture in isolation. Lena pulled her hands back, trembling from the emotional intensity. But they left this behind, archives scattered across dozens of worlds, waiting for someone who could understand. She turned to face Primi. That's why no one could activate the chamber. Modern galactic civilization still demands the same thing that ancient empire did. Pure logic, pure reason, pure efficiency. Species that experience reality through integrated emotion and sensation are dismissed as primitive. But the Vidians knew something important. They knew that some truths can't be separated from feeling. Some knowledge can't be reduced to pure data. And humans retain that integration, Primi said slowly. We never had a choice. We evolved as social creatures who needed emotional bonds to survive. We developed tools with our hands at the same time we developed complex reasoning. Our emotions and our thoughts grew together, inseparable. Lena gestured at the vast archive around them. We're not special because we're superior. We're special because we happen to develop in a way that matches how the Vidians experienced reality. She walked toward the center of the chamber, where a raised platform held something covered by a crystalline dome. As she approached, the runes around it began to glow brighter. There's something else, Lena said. Something they wanted to make sure we found. She placed her hands on the dome, and immediately a message flooded through her. Not just information, but a direct communication across millennia. The Vidians had known about Earth. Their future seers had detected humanity's potential long before humans developed space travel. They'd recognized humanity as what they called a bridge species, beings who naturally integrated different ways of knowing. The message was clear: help the others remember. Show them that emotional truth and logical truth are not enemies, but partners. Prove that knowledge doesn't have to be cold to be real. Lena lifted the dome. Beneath it lay a handprint, clearly meant for human proportions. And beneath the handprint, text in multiple ancient languages. One of them looked remarkably similar to Proto-Indo-European, the ancestral language of most Earth tongues. It's an activation sequence, Lena whispered, for the entire network, all the archives across all the worlds. Primiesse calors flesh d'alarm. Wait, think about what you're doing. If you activate this, if you prove that human methods can access knowledge that galactic science cannot, you'll overturn the entire established order. Careers will be destroyed. Power structures will collapse. They'll fight you. I know. Lena studied the handprint. Her hand would fit perfectly. But the Vidians left this choice for a reason. They believed that someday, someone would be brave enough to show the galaxy a different way. They believed in us, Primi, in humanity, in the possibility that we'd choose wholeness over hierarchy. Above them, something rumbled. Dust drifted down from the darkness. Sulmuth, Primi said urgently. He must have discovered we're gone. He'll seal the entrance. Lena had seconds to decide. Play it safe, document what they'd found, go through proper channels, and watch as the discovery was suppressed or stolen. Or take a leap of faith. She thought about her grandmother, who'd taught her that the best way to honor the past was to let it speak to the future. Lena placed her hand in the print. The archive blazed to life. Energy pulsed outward from the handprint like ripples in a pond. The runes throughout the archive blazed with light, creating patterns that spiraled upward into the darkness. Lena felt the power surge through her, not painful but overwhelming, like touching a live wire made of pure meaning. Then, just as suddenly, it stopped. The light faded to a gentle glow. The archive settled into quiet activity, humming with life after thousands of years of silence. What did you do? Preemie's colors cycled through confusion, awe, and fear. I'm not entirely sure, Lena admitted. Her hand was still tingling. But I think I just activated the entire Vidian network. Every archive, on every world where they left their knowledge. The rumbling from above intensified. Loose debris clattered down the stairs. We need to move, Preemie said. Now. They ran for the stairs, Lena's boots pounding on stone, while Preemie floated ahead in urgent silence. The climb felt twice as long as the descent. Lena's lungs burned by the time they reached the main chamber. Solmith was waiting. The Chithrak's director stood in the archway, his compound eyes fixed on them with undisguised fury. Behind him, for security personnel from various species, blocked the exit. Unauthorized access to a restricted site. Solmith's voice buzzed with anger. Contamination of archaeological materials. Reckless endangerment of priceless historical artifacts. Dr. Hartwell, you're finished in this field. Director, if you just let me explain what we found. I don't care what you found. Solmith's legs clattered against the floor as he advanced. You are human. Your species has been part of the galactic community for barely half a century. You have no business conducting independent research on materials this significant. You should have been observing, learning, following proper protocols. Lena felt anger flare in her chest. Proper protocols that have produced no results for 40 years. Proper protocols that prevent primitive emotional responses from corrupting data. The data isn't corrupted. It's finally responding. Because it was designed for emotional responses. The Vidians built this archive for species that experience reality through integrated thought and feeling. Species like mine. Solmith's laugh was like chitinous plates scraping together. Ridiculous. You're inventing fantasy to justify your recklessness. The Vidians, if they even existed, would never have designed anything specifically for humans. Your species didn't even exist when this structure was built. Actually, Preemie interjected quietly. She's telling the truth. I witnessed the activation sequence. I saw the experiential memories. Director, there's an entire archive system beneath this chamber that has never appeared on our scans. Dr. Hartwell accessed it using methods we never considered because we assumed emotional engagement was unscientific. Solmith turned his multiple eyes on Preemie. Then you're complicit in this breach. Both of you will face disciplinary hearings. Before Lena could respond, every rune in the chamber suddenly flared to life. The walls glowed with cascading patterns of light. And from somewhere deep in the structure came a sound like a vast breath being released after eons of holding it in point. One of the security personnel, a Nephirite named Wishdrift, made a gasping sound. Director, I'm receiving reports from across the sector. Similar structures on 17 different worlds are activating simultaneously. They're broadcasting a signal. What kind of signal? Unknown, but it's matching quantum resonance patterns found in human neural activity. It's as if the structures are specifically calling to humanity. Solma spun back to Lena. What have you done? What the Vidians asked me to do, Lena said steadily. I activated their network. Their knowledge is now accessible to anyone who can engage with it emotionally as well as intellectually. They left this gift for the galaxy, but it requires a different approach than current academic standards allow. This is a disaster. Solmith's voice had gone quiet, which somehow made it more threatening. Do you have any idea how many established research hierarchies you've just undermined? How many careers depend on maintaining current methodological standards? I am aware, but I'm also aware that the Vidians had knowledge worth preserving. Medical advances, philosophical insights, ways of understanding consciousness and reality that we've lost by overspecializing. They saw the danger in reducing everything to pure logic, in dismissing emotional and physical knowledge as primitive. Lena stepped forward, meeting Sulmitha's compound gaze. They predicted that humanity would eventually join the galactic community. They predicted we'd retain the integration of thought and feeling that most species abandoned. And they left this gift specifically hoping we'd share it with everyone else. Not to prove we're superior, but to help other species remember what they've forgotten. Philosophical nonsense. Then why is the network activating? Why do the archives respond to human touch and human emotion? Why did 40 years of your brilliant research produce nothing, while one human researcher accessed the system in less than a week? Lena kept her voice calm, but she couldn't quite hide her frustration. Maybe, Director, the problem isn't that my methods are primitive. Maybe the problem is that your methods are incomplete. The chamber pulsed with light again, as if emphasizing her point. Sulmith was silent for a long moment. Then he turned to the security team. Take them both into custody. I'm calling an emergency session of the Galactic Institute Board. They'll decide what to do about this mess. As security moved forward to escort them out, Lena caught Preemie's attention. The Lumini flashed a quick pattern that Lena had learned to read. Trust. Whatever happened next, they'd face it together. The station's conference room was packed within the hour. Word had spread fast. Not just about Lena's unauthorized research, but about the network activation. Scientists from across the sector had detected the signal. Ships were already changing course, heading for Ashmar 4 and the other 17 archive sites. Lena sat at the center of the room, flanked by security, while Sulmith presented his case to the assembled board members. They appeared as holograms, representatives of a dozen species scattered across light years of space. The human researcher acted with reckless disregard for established protocols, Sulmith concluded. She contaminated a pristine archaeological site with emotional responses and unsupervised contact. She activated an unknown system without proper safety precautions or authorization. I recommend immediate expulsion from the archaeological community and criminal charges for destruction of irreplaceable historical materials. The board members murmured among themselves. Lena could see which way this was heading. They'd make an example of her, prove that humans couldn't be trusted with serious research, reinforce the hierarchy that kept newer species firmly in their place. Then one of the holograms spoke up. An elderly mind weaver named Thought Dancer, respected across the galaxy for her historical scholarship. Before we pass judgment, I have a question for Dr. Hartwell. The Mindweaver's telepathic voice resonated in everyone's minds. What did you find in the archive? Lena took a breath. This was her only chance. I found proof, she said clearly, that there's more than one way to know the truth. I found a civilization that achieved greatness not by abandoning emotion, but by integrating it with reason. I found medical knowledge, philosophical wisdom, and artistic achievement that we've been unable to access because we've decided that only pure logic counts as real knowledge. She stood, despite the security personnel tensing beside her. The Viridians left us a gift, not just for humans, but for everyone. They're asking us to remember that we're whole beings, not just calculating machines. That emotional truth and logical truth aren't enemies. That sometimes you have to feel something to truly understand it. Lena met Thought Dancer's eyes across the holographic connection. And yes, I broke protocols to access it, because those protocols were designed to study dead things. The Vidian Archive isn't dead. It's alive, waiting for someone brave enough to engage with it fully. Mind, heart, and body together. Thought Dancer was silent for a moment. Then she said something that made Sulmitha's plates rattle with shock. In ancient Mindweaver texts, there are references to the Viridians. We called them the Whole Ones. Our ancestors respected them greatly, until they disappeared. We assumed they'd died out naturally. But now I wonder if they were driven away by the same forces that push us all toward overspecialization. She looked directly at Sulmith. Perhaps Dr. Hartwell's real crime is that she reminded us of something we'd prefer to forget, that we've lost something important in our pursuit of pure efficiency. The room erupted into argument. 2 months after activating the network, Lena stood in the archive and watched a young Chithrax researcher struggle with a memory sphere. The student, Clickweave, was trying desperately to access Viridian mathematical concepts using pure calculation. Nothing was happening. "You're thinking too hard," Lena said gently. "Mathematics isn't just about numbers for the Viridians. It's about the beauty of patterns, the elegance of solutions. You have to feel why the equation works, not just understand that it does." Clickweave's antennae twitched with frustration. "I don't understand. Feelings are biochemical responses. They're not data. They're a different kind of data. Just as real, just as important." Lena placed her own hand on the sphere and let herself experience the mathematical concept it contained. The beauty of it washed through her, a perfect symmetry that was as emotionally satisfying as it was logically sound. "Here, try thinking about the most beautiful pattern you've ever seen. Not useful or efficient, just beautiful." Clickweave hesitated, then placed a manipulator claw on the sphere. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the young Chithrax made a soft clicking sound of surprise. "I see it. The equation is beautiful, like watching molecules crystallize in perfect formation." Clickweave's voice held wonder. "I never thought of mathematics this way before. That's because you were taught to separate beauty from truth. The Viridians knew they were the same thing." Lena left Clickweave to explore and walk through the archive. It had become a busy place in the past weeks. After Thought Dancer's intervention, the Galactic Institute Board had voted to allow limited access to the Viridian network, with Lena appointed as lead researcher and coordinator. Sulmith had resigned in protest. Part of Lena felt guilty about that, but mostly she felt relieved. The new director, a pragmatic Lumini named Bright Pattern, understood that the archive represented an opportunity too valuable to waste on academic politics. Ships arrived daily from across the galaxy. Some brought scholars eager to learn. Others brought skeptics determined to prove the whole thing was a fraud. And some brought people who simply wanted to understand why they felt so incomplete, so disconnected from their own emotional lives. The archive taught them all. Preemie approached, colors swirling with excitement. "You need to see what we found in Sector 7. It's incredible." Sector 7 was dedicated to Viridian medical knowledge. Lena followed Preemie to where a team of researchers from various species clustered around a large installation. "Watch this," Preemie said that a human researcher named David, who'd arrived from Earth 3 weeks ago, placed his hands on the medical console. The device hummed to life, displaying a holographic representation of human anatomy that was far more detailed than anything modern science had achieved. But more than that, it showed the connections between physical health, emotional state, and mental well-being as an integrated whole. "The Viridians understood something we forgot," David explained. "You can't treat the body without treating the mind and heart. Disease isn't just physical malfunction. It's disruption of the whole self." Their medical technology addresses all three simultaneously. A Nephri physician named Driftcom pulsed with skeptical colors. "That's not medicine. That's philosophy." "It's both," David said patiently. "And the results speak for themselves. I've been testing Viridian healing techniques on volunteers. Recovery times are cut in half because we're addressing the emotional trauma that slows physical healing. Pain management improves because we're treating the suffering, not just the sensation." Lena watched as more researchers engaged with the medical archive. Not all of them could access it easily. Species that had fully abandoned emotional integration struggled. But some, like Clickweave, were beginning to remember what their ancestors had known. That wholeness was stronger than separation. Later, Lena sat alone in the main chamber, the place where it had all started. The runes still shifted and flowed, but now she could read some of them. Not with her mind alone, but with her whole self. They told stories of joy and sorrow, triumph and tragedy, all the messy complexity of being alive. Her communicator chimed. Bright Pattern's voice came through. "Dr. Hartwell, we have a situation." You need to come to the command center immediately. Lena arrived to find the center in chaos. Screens showed news feeds from across the galaxy. Some were positive, celebrating the Vidian rediscovery, but others showed protests, demonstrations, and in some cases, violence. What happened? Bright Pattern's colors were grim. The Sovereign Collective has issued a declaration. They're calling the Vidian Archive a threat to galactic stability. They claim that emotional knowledge is dangerous, uncontrollable, and primitive. They're demanding all the archives be sealed and that humans be banned from archaeological research. The Sovereign Collective, an alliance of species that had fully embraced pure logic and efficiency. They'd built their entire civilization on the idea that emotion was a weakness to be eliminated. How much support do they have? Too much. Many species are frightened by what the archives represent. Change is always scary, especially when it challenges fundamental assumptions. Bright Pattern shifted colors to show determination. But we also have supporters. Thought Dancer has been speaking out. Other scholars are defending your work. It's not over yet. Lena studied the screens. On one, she saw footage of a protest outside an archive site. Beings of various species held signs declaring that emotion had no place in science. On another screen, a human teacher was helping alien students engage with Vidian art. Their faces showing wonder and joy point to visions of the future. One that feared wholeness. One that embraced it. There's something else, Bright Pattern said quietly. We've detected something in the deepest part of the archive, a chamber we haven't been able to access. The entrance is sealed with a lock that requires a very specific sequence of emotional and physical inputs. We think there's something important down there. Something the Vidians saved for last. Lena felt her heart rate increase. What kind of something? We don't know. But the energy readings suggest it's not just data storage. It's something active, something alive. Preemie appeared in the doorway, flashing urgent reds. Lena, the Sovereign Collective isn't just protesting. They've sent a fleet. They're planning to seize the archives by force, claiming they're too dangerous to leave in unregulated hands. How long do we have? 3 days. Maybe 4. Lena looked back at the screens, at the galaxy dividing itself over a simple question. Was it safe to feel things? Was emotional truth as valid as logical truth? Could wholeness be trusted? The Vidians had believed the answer was yes. They died believing it. And now humanity had a chance to prove them right or watch their legacy be destroyed. We need to access that deep chamber, Lena said. Whatever's down there, the Vidians saved it for a reason. They knew this moment might come. They knew there would be resistance. Bright Pattern's colors shifted to worried violet. The lock requires an incredibly complex sequence. We've been analyzing it for weeks. You need to experience a precise progression of emotions while performing specific physical actions. One mistake and the whole thing resets. It could take months to solve, or it could take minutes if the right person tries. Lena stood, because the Vidians didn't design that lock to keep people out. They designed it as a final test, to make sure that whoever reached the end understood what they were trying to teach. She headed for the door. Give me a team of researchers who've successfully accessed the archive. Mixed species. We're going down, and we're going to find out what the Vidians wanted us to know badly enough to hide it behind their strongest protection. Preemie followed, colors bright with determination. You think it's a weapon? Something to defend the archives? No, the Vidians weren't fighters. They were teachers. Lena smiled despite the weight on her shoulders. I think it's a message. Maybe the most important message they ever left. And I think we're going to need it because this fight isn't going to be won with force. It's going to be won with truth. She descended into the archive, gathering her team as she went. Clickweave joined them, antennae quivering with nervousness and excitement. David came, along with a half-dozen others who'd learned to engage with embodied knowledge. Together, they went to find the Vidians' final gift, and above them, in the cold vacuum of space, ships began to gather for a confrontation that would decide the future of knowledge itself. The deepest chamber was unlike anything else in the archive. The walls here didn't shift and flow. They were still, waiting. At the center stood a circular platform surrounded by runes that pulsed with a rhythm that matched Lena's heartbeat. There, Bright Patterns said, pointing to a complex pattern on the floor. That's the lock. Our analysis suggests it requires experiencing 12 distinct emotional states in precise sequence, each accompanied by specific physical movements. Lena studied the pattern. It was beautiful, intricate, and deeply personal. The Viridians hadn't just locked this chamber. They'd created a meditation, a journey through the full spectrum of emotional experience. I need everyone to step back, she said. This is something I have to do alone. The team retreated to the chamber's edge. Lena stood at the pattern's beginning and took a deep breath. The first rune glowed softly, inviting her to begin. She started with joy. Pure, uncomplicated happiness. She thought about her grandmother's laugh, about the thrill of discovery, about the first time she'd made the archive respond to her touch. She let the feeling fill her completely while placing her hand on the rune that it flared gold. Next came sorrow. She remembered loss, grief, the death of dreams, and people she'd loved. She let herself feel it fully, not pushing it away, and touched the second rune. Deep purple light dot on through the sequence. Curiosity, green as new growth. Determination, burning red. Fear, flickering silver. Love, warm amber. Anger, sharp orange. Peace, soft blue. Each emotion genuine, each one acknowledged and honored. The 11th rune required something unusual. Awe, the feeling of standing before something so much greater than yourself that all you can do is marvel. Lena thought about the vast sweep of galactic history, about the Viridians who'd created this place knowing they'd never see it used, about the courage it took to believe in a better future. The rune blazed white. The 12th and final rune pulsed, waiting. According to Bright Pattern's analysis, this one required an emotion the translators had struggled to name. The closest approximation was something like connected wholeness or integrated being. Lena closed her eyes and simply felt everything at once. Joy and sorrow, strength and vulnerability, logic and passion, mind and heart and body all together in one moment of complete presence. She placed her hand on the final rune. The platform began to rise, as it ascended. The walls of the chamber turned transparent. Lena found herself rising through layers of stone and ice, up through the archive, through the research station, up into the open sky of Ashmar, IV, and oh, not the sky. Space itself. The platform stopped, hovering impossibly in vacuum. But Lena could breathe. Some kind of field surrounded her, protecting her while allowing her to see everything. She wasn't alone on the platform, that a figure stood beside her, shimmering like heat haze. It solidified slowly into a being with iridescent skin and eyes that held depths of feeling beyond naming. A Viridian. I am Solon, the being said, and Lena understood the words not through sound but through direct experience. Last keeper of the archive. Last teacher. I have waited a very long time for you. You're alive. Lena managed. In stasis. Sleeping. Dreaming of the day when someone would solve the meditation and wake me. Solon smiled, and it was the saddest, most hopeful expression Lena had ever seen. You did well. You understood what we were trying to teach. Below them, ships appeared. The Sovereign Collective Fleet, bristling with weapons, ready to seize the archives and destroy what they couldn't control. They're coming to stop this, Lena said. To seal away your knowledge because they're afraid of it. I know. We saw this possibility. We saw many possibilities. Solon gestured, and suddenly Lena could see them too. Futures branching like tree limbs. In some, the archives were destroyed and the galaxy continued on its path toward cold efficiency. In others, the knowledge spread and civilizations learned to integrate emotion with reason again. We couldn't force the galaxy to choose wholeness, Solon said. That's not how wisdom works. We could only offer an invitation. Show a different path. Hope that someone would be brave enough to walk it. I don't feel very brave right now. Lena watched more ships arrive, some from the collective fleet, others from allied species coming to defend the archives. I feel terrified. What if I made everything worse? What if people die because I activated your network? Then they die knowing there was a choice. That's more than my people had. Solon placed a hand on her shoulder, and Lena felt warmth and strength flow through the contact. You didn't create this conflict. You revealed it. The galaxy has been broken for a long time, divided against itself, teaching its children that they must choose between thinking and feeling. You simply showed them there was another way. The collective fleet moved closer. Communication channels crackled with demands for surrender. What do we do? Lena asked. We teach them, Solon said simply. Watch. The Vidian raised both hands, and every archive across 17 worlds began to sing. Not with sound, but with pure experiential transmission. Every being in range, whether they wanted to or not, felt a moment of integrated wholeness. Logic and emotion together. Mind and heart as partners that IT lasted only seconds. But in those seconds, millions of beings experienced what it felt like to be complete. The collective fleet slowed. Stopped. Communication channels went silent. Then, slowly, one ship broke formation. Then another. Beings who'd spent their entire lives suppressing emotion suddenly remembered what it felt like to simply be whole, present, alive. Not all of them joined. Some fled, frightened by the intensity of feeling. Some attacked, desperate to restore the old order. But enough changed their minds that the assault faltered, dissolved into confusion and debate. Solon lowered their hands. The work isn't finished. This is just the beginning. Some will resist for generations. But the seed is planted. What happens now? Lena asked. Now we build something new. Not Vidian civilization reborn, but something better. A galactic community that honors all ways of knowing. Logic and emotion. Individual and collective. Body and mind and heart. Solon turned to her. I'm weak from centuries of sleep. I'll need help. Teachers. Translators. Bridges between species that have forgotten how to talk to each other. You wanted to help build this. I want you to lead it. You've already shown you can do what others thought impossible. You brought a dead chamber to life simply by being willing to feel things fully. Lena looked down at Ashmar 4, at the research station where Clickweave and David and Preemy and dozens of others were learning to integrate emotion with reason. She thought about her grandmother, who'd taught her that the past spoke most clearly to those who listened with their whole selves. I'll do it, she said, but not alone. This can't be about humans saving the galaxy. It has to be about all of us saving each other. Agreed. Solon smiled. The Vidians tried to carry this knowledge alone. It killed us. But together, with humans as bridges and teachers, sharing what you never forgot, perhaps the galaxy can remember what wholeness feels like. The platform descended. As they sank back through layers of ice and stone, Lena saw the future spreading before her. Years of work, resistance and setbacks, slow progress and occasional breakthroughs. Not a revolution, but an evolution, one being at a time learning that they didn't have to choose between heart and mind. They landed in the deep chamber. The team rushed forward, flooding Lena with questions. She held up a hand for quiet. Everyone, meet Solon, last of the Vidians, first teacher of the new way. She smiled at their shocked expressions. We have a lot of work to do. The Sovereign Collective won't give up easily. But we're not trying to defeat them. We're trying to heal them, to show them what they've lost, and help them remember how to be whole. Clickweave stepped forward, antennae trembling. I want to help. I spent my whole life believing emotions were weakness. But the archive showed me I was only half alive. David nodded. Earth will send more researchers. Humans who can teach what we never forgot. Primies colors blazed, rainbow bright. And those of us learning to integrate will help translate between those who've forgotten and those who remember. Above them, in orbit, the crisis slowly defused. Not through victory, but through transformation. One conversation at a time, one changed mind at a time, the galaxy began the long process of healing its ancient wound. Months later, Lena stood in the main chamber and watched hundreds of students from dozens of species learning to engage with embodied knowledge. The rune chamber hummed with life, no longer silent, no longer waiting. Solon worked beside her, growing stronger each day, teaching what the Viridians had known and learning what new species had discovered. We did it, Lena said quietly. We changed things. You did it, Solon corrected. I just gave you the tools. You had the courage to use them. Lena placed her hand on the wall, feeling the runes pulse warmly beneath her palm. The chamber was silent until a human brought it to life. But really, it was never silent. It was just waiting for someone who knew how to listen. And now it sings, Solon said. And in its song, the galaxy remembers what it means to be whole. Outside, across 17 worlds, the archives glowed with steady light. Not monuments to a dead civilization, but living schools where the future was being built one integrated mind and heart at a time. The silence was broken. The song had begun, and it would echo through the stars for generations to come.